worn out. And then someone else will have exactly the same bottom bracket, and they'll say, well, I've been riding for 5 years with that bottom bracket and it's still in perfect condition. We've got a graph. What's this graph all about?
So one of the things that you have in engineering principles is load versus life, and that's typically called an SN curve, but I've simplified it here for the benefit of the viewers.
And me.
Load is along the y-axis and cycles is along the x-axis. The x-axis is a logarithmic axis, so it's going up in multiples of 10. It's not linear 10, so we've got 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000 and so on. If you are pedaling with a very, very low cadence but massive torque, you're putting a lot of load into those bottom bracket bearings. So you'd be over here. So you would actually get less life than someone who spun the cranks up and was putting less load but more RPM through. The limiting factor on a bike is not the speed, because it's whether it's 60 RPM or 100 RPM, that's nowhere near the limit of the bearing, but the torque that you put through the bearing is. So that's what that differential is. So the person who is only getting 2,000 kilometers, if they are on the heavy side, then they'll be that way.
Yeah.
The person who's lightweight and spinning at 120, they're putting significantly less torque through it, so they'll get more cycles, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah. So you got like a track sprinter, they're going to be somewhere around here, aren't they?
Yeah.
And then your climber, you know, your real lightweight rider, they're going to be, well, hopefully if they're spinning away, they're going to be somewhere, hopefully down there, aren't they?
Yes.
Now finally then, what about maintenance of bearings? Because not everyone likes to get their hands dirty and grubby like us in the workshop, do they? What can the viewers do to try and get longer life basically out of their bearings?
There's a few things. The biggest one is contamination. Contamination will make the life of the bearing shorter. That's right. The biggest one. The other one is when you come to install it. When you install bearings, you tend to have a press that presses directly onto the bearing, like a BB30 press or something like that. One thing that people sort of aspire to because they think it's good is having stainless steel presses. Stainless steel is a pretty terrible material in some characteristics. It has this characteristic called it galls.
Right.
And that's when it sort of friction welds itself to another material, or friction welds itself. And you can have an issue where you put the bearing in, and as you're tightening the press, it galls on the surface, so it's trashing your bearing before you even get started.
Yeah.
So I'd recommend you use either plastic or aluminium, or if you are going to use stainless steel, make sure it's got a bigger clearance than you would normally have.
Okay.
Another thing is when you're putting the bearings in, the most common failure mode that I've seen is poor alignment. So alignment specifically in bottom brackets, because unlike wheels, which tend to be machined on a lathe, bottom brackets quite a lot of the time on carbon bike frames are glued together in the middle. So what happens is you've got two bearings and they're slightly misaligned. So if you take these two as an example, you might have what's known as parallel misalignment. So if the right hand is the drive side of the bike and the left hand side is the non-drive side, that's parallel misalignment, so they're completely offset. Or you can have angular misalignment, so the center lines are in the same place and one's tipped.
Right.
If you have any of those things, you've got moving parts in there, then what the crank tries to do is it tries to straighten itself. It can only straighten itself through the bearings because that's the only point of motion, and you'll tend to do that, which is fretting. Bearing is really, really hard. Carbon isn't, and it'll just wear the hole out.
Oh, right.
So you need to worry about that.
Yeah.
In terms of routine maintenance, I personally don't take the seals off to repack with grease. Right. I just change the bearing.
Yeah. Because you think the life's gone, basically.
Life's gone, yeah. But plenty of people take the seals off to grease them. I certainly wouldn't recommend knocking them out.
Guilty. Now, a massive thanks to Hambini today for popping in and telling us all about bearings and all sorts of graphs and stuff like that. I mean, I've learned a hell of a lot today, and I hope you have too. And after all, if he wasn't here, I wouldn't have had some of these. And how cool is that? Now remember as well to like and share this video, give it a big thumbs up, tell your friends about it, especially if they've got bearings that are absolutely knackered and you need to just reaffirm the point they've got to replace them. And also remember to check out the GCN shop at shop.globalcyclingnetwork.com. We have a whole heap of products for you to check out. And what video should they watch now?
I think maybe they should watch you pressing in a bottom bracket.
Hopefully I did that one right. No, I'm pretty sure I did. And it's going to be just here.